So before you guys ask, yes, I am doing this review slightly in the dark. Reason being is because the fan turns on when this light turns on. So the fan is very loud and would be very distracting, so I had this light turned off. You should be able to see things just fine, but I just want to go ahead and warn you guys ahead of time. But let's begin the review. Today we'll be taking a look at the Kohler Wellworth and Highline Class 5 toilets of this design. There isn't a name for this, but I know the older versions are known as Wellworth and Highline Classics, when it has the classic corner take similar to that of the Geniums and the second gen WaterGuard. So it is a bit different, so we're reviewing it of this design, but we're going to be kind of a review of most Class 5s in general, but with this toilet. I will obviously review other Class 5 and 6 toilets, considering that some of them are still pretty different, even though some of them might have some better upsides or downsides compared to others. But today we're going to be talking about why most Class 5s suck, especially this piece of garbage. Okay, so let's start with compliments, and I only have one compliment. I like the overall design. It's modern, yes, but it stands out in a good way. I really like this tank too, as it does have a very nice look to it, as well as the handle. Very classy, and I do like it. But that's about all I like about this particular toilet in general. It only goes downhill from here. The inside of the tank is pretty standard. You got the handle, you got the fill valve right there, which I believe is a fluid master. And then we got this piece of garbage in the middle. It's called the Aqua Piston, and they've been using it since the late 2000s or so with these Class 5 and 6 toilets. And this thing hinders a lot of modern Kohler toilets as well. Stuff like the Revolution 360 toilets and still a bunch of Class 5 toilets that they still make in many different forms. This contraption sucks so much. I often complain about the Mansfield flush towers, but sometimes I argue that this canister is so much worse sometimes. Because look at this crap. I mean, it like barely functions, just like a press and release right there. Barely did anything. And it closes very quickly. Not only that, these things are known for having problems breaking and all that stuff. I don't know why Kohler still uses this piece of garbage, because it hinders a lot of the toilets that they make. And I just don't know why they still use it. Sure, you might argue that it's a water-saving canister, but it barely functions sometimes. Like, that flush was so short, it stood up for like less than a second before closing. That's not even 1.28, honestly, and this is a 1.28 toilet. So, what's the point? No, I have seen some people work around this by getting the Aqua Piston out of there and replacing it with a normal base with a flapper. Sure, you can do that, but like, you have to go through so much work to do that, when a lot of other toilets come with normal bases with flappers. So, why would you want to do that to yourself, unless you're that dedicated? Even after getting a flapper, you'll still have a bunch of problems as well. Sure, you might be able to complete the flush, but there are still downsides to this toilet. Alright, let's talk about the Trapway itself. You know, it looks pretty smooth. But then we get inside the ball. There's the Trapway opening. I like to dub it the foot Trapway opening. Now, newer versions have more like a Glacier Bay style Trapway opening. They since discontinued this foot Trapway in 2021 or so, and they've had the Glacier Bay style since at least 2019 for some models. I don't really like this Trapway opening. Sure, it doesn't look completely cloggable, but something about it just irks me a wrong way. But the newer Glacier Bay Trapway openings, though, are completely worse. Now, I want to kind of review them in the same aspect, the foot Trapway ones and the Glacier Bay Trapway ones, because it's still kind of the same thing despite the redesigns. Okay, let's do a press and release flush. Like, what kind of flush is that? Now let's hold the handle down and get a complete flush. Not much better. So what is my opinion of the flush overall? Absolutely awful. Like, what kind of flush is that? Like, that is so choppy, it's not even funny. So, not only does the flush suck, the pulling factor in Siphon especially suck. On a press and release, it is absolutely awful. Like, you saw how short that flush was on a press and release. You can imagine how much stuff is left behind, and I can attest to how much stuff it leaves behind. A lot. I even noticed that it leaves a lot of liquid behind too. So like, if you have like liquids that you need to evacuate from the bowl, if you do a press and release and it completely fills the bowl, well, it's going to leave a lot behind, which is honestly quite pathetic. But considering how choppy the siphon is, I mean, are you really shocked? No, it is slightly improved on a hold down the handle flush, as you'll kind of see here. But I also noticed a lot of regurgitation when it siphons up for a pretty long time. And honestly, the extension really isn't that great. So even then, the pull is still not that great. I mean, sometimes it works, but other times it doesn't still work, which is not something you want to rely on. Now, on modified versions, like say if you put a flapper in this, I have heard the pull is a lot better, but I don't really trust that siphon at all, especially considering a lot of regurgitation. And there's a consideration, but on an aqua piston, it's not good. And it's especially off on a press and release. Performance is an interesting story. Original versions of these were not good at performance. But as the years went on, they seem to have slightly improved. And I mean slightly. Like, it's serviceable, but it doesn't mean that you won't eventually clog one at one point. Because I have seen a few of these clogged. Everyone always tells me these are great performers. I don't really believe that. Especially if you're relying on a press and release, it's definitely going to suck. But if you hold the handle down, maybe it's slightly improved. Maybe it'll be okay at performing. But that's about it. Now, the flush was absolutely awful. But do you know what else is absolutely awful? The ball rinse. I didn't discuss this earlier, but the rim jets are pointed down, which is already a bad sign. But wait till you see how it's applied. Let's have a look. Yeah, I don't think I need to say much. It literally just sprinkles on the ball and that's it. And honestly, it seems like the rim just barely function on a press and release as well. Just like a small sprinkle and that's it. And you wonder why the ball rinse is so god awful on these. And even on a longer flush, let's just try an example right now. It still barely looks like it does anything. Not helping are the angled down jets, which miss some areas of the ball. That's why you often get stains everywhere. I wouldn't even be shocked at the front, which has front jets by the way, still struggles with ball rinse. Like, this is pathetic. And that is the Kohler Wellworth and Highline Class 5 toilets of the modern era. This is easily the most overrated toilet of all time. I've heard from everyone that these toilets are so amazingly decent and it's probably the best modern toilet you can get. Well, from prior past bad experiences and putting up with one for a few days, I can safely say this thing is garbage and you should stay away from it. But let's grade it. If I had to give credit to this toilet at least once, I really do like the design of this toilet. It has a nice fancy look for a fairly modern toilet, and I have to give it a 7. I really do like the designs, honestly. Okay, the fill valve, it's fine. I definitely noticed it's a little bit more slow than some other Fluid Master fill valves, but it's alright, especially considering that the main problem of the tank parts is the aqua piston. This stupid canister is a piece of garbage and Kohler needs to stop using it. Get rid of it and go back to flappers for goodness sakes, because this thing sucks. It doesn't stay up for long at all, not even giving it a 1.28 flush, which is quite pathetic. Not only that, the canister is also known for having lots of problems, getting stuck, and just breaking altogether. This thing sucks, it needs to go. But for parts overall, I give it a 3. Would you be surprised the quality control is crap? No, me neither. As with most modern toilets, these things can have some strange defects from time to time, mostly with just the porcelain quality and all that stuff. And it's not just with Kohler, it's like with every company. But I think easily the biggest problem is just how the rim jets are designed. They're so weak and pathetic, they point straight down, and because of that, the ballwards is absolutely god-awful. We'll discuss that later, but the quality control really is not good, especially considering that most of the water goes to the jet and the rest of it just does whatever at this point. I give the quality control a 3. While the trapway itself is smooth, the opening itself is a little bit questionable. Keep in mind, earlier versions of Class 5s like the Cimarron were known for being complete pieces of crap at performance. Something about this trapway opening just irks me the wrong way, and honestly the glacier-based style ones on the redesigned ones are a little bit worse. But overall, I give the trapway a 5. You know, this thing often gets praised for its better flush style. Well, I farly disagree. Honestly, are these people looking at the same toilet I am? Because the flush is awful. Absolutely awful. For the lower end score, it's a 2 because the flush is way too short. Not only that, the flushing style sucks. And it's a 3 for the higher end score. Yeah, it's not much better. Another thing that sucks about this toilet is its horrible pulling factor. It's easily a 2 on a press and release. Not even a question. But how about the extended flush? Does it slightly improve it? No, not really. One of the things I noticed this thing leaves behind a lot is liquids, which is really pathetic. But considering how choppy the siphon is and the pulling factor really isn't all that great, it's not really shocking. Honestly, the pull really isn't much better with the full flush, and I'd still have to give it a 4. Now, performances seem to be slightly improved compared to some other versions of the Class 5, but I still wouldn't say it's too good. On the lower end scale, it's easily a 4. But on the higher end scale, I don't really see a reason to give it anything higher than a 5. These things can have a tendency to clog still a little bit, but not as much as its older variants. Thank goodness, but still, could have been improved upon. I think besides the flush and the pulling factor being just completely abysmal, I think something that's far worse is the bowl rinse. I don't know how anyone finds this bowl rinse acceptable. One of the main issues is that the rim jets are pointed down, meaning that it doesn't cover some areas like some other toilets with angled rim jets. Not only that, it's applied so pathetically, it's no wonder that this thing gutter stains entirely throughout the bowl. Like, this is easily the worst bowl rinse I've ever seen of a modern toilet. Lower end score gets a 1, while the higher end score still gets a 2. Survivability definitely doesn't look very hot for the lower end score. It's a 2 easily. As for the survivability of the higher end score, I at most give it a 4. And that's because of all the issues that this thing has. From the choppy flush to the terrible bowl rinse, this thing has it all. And not in a good way. Okay, let's talk about the overall value and if you should buy one. Short answer, absolutely not. Long answer, well, here we go. This thing is often praised as one of the better modern toilets. I'm sorry, are you looking at the same toilet I am? Because I don't see any of that. The flush sucks. The pulling factor sucks. The bowl rinse, absolutely abysmal. The quality control, not good at all. The parts outside of the fill valve suck. I'm sorry, what's the hype of these toilets again? I can understand if you try to modify this toilet and you might get some better results. Sure, But on its regular intended usage, when you don't modify anything at all and just use that as intended, it's abysmal! You should stay far away from any Kohler Class 5 that you see. Stay away from Kohler Class 5s. Because honestly, you might think you might be getting something decent out of this, but that's a straight up lie. Not only that, a Kohler Wellworth and a Highline can go easily from around $200 to $300. Do you really want to be ripped off that badly? I mean, like, literally the only good thing is the design. That is it. Everything else sucks. So, don't bother with this. In fact, don't bother with any Kohler Class 5 at all. Stay away from them. Trust me on this one. On the lower end score, it easily gets a 2. As for the higher end scale, a 3. Now let's talk about the final scores of the Kohler Wellworth and Highline Class 5 toilets of the modern era. The lower end score gets a 31 out of 100, while the higher end score gets a 39 out of 100. I really don't get these toilets at all. Why are these so hyped up again when everything about them suck? The boring sucks, the quality sucks, the flush sucks, the pull sucks. Everything about this toilet besides the design sucks. Honestly, if you're buying a modern toilet, stay away from a Kohler Class 5 toilet. Whether it be a Wellworth, a Highline Arc, or any of that nonsense. Just stay away from it. Trust me when I say you are missing nothing by skipping out on this toilet. There are much better toilets you can easily pick up for a lower cost that will do you much better than this piece of garbage ever will.